Hi Facebookers, this is Steve Barrett, Editorial Director of PRWeek. We are doing our regular weekly podcast with the gang as usual. We've got Mickey Brown behind the dials and our new producer Christy. So welcome Christy. And we've got Frank Washkuch, my co-host, regular presenter. Welcome Frank. And we've got Mark Viden here, who is Head of Brand at Dignity Health. So welcome Mark, good to have you here. And looking forward to doing a podcast with you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, it's great to be here.
If you've got any comments or questions, observations on Facebook, please be nice. We don't have to be snarky on social, but do get involved and hope you enjoy the show, which we will start very shortly. Hello and welcome to the PRWeek's regular weekly roundup of everything that matters in the worlds of PR and communications. My name's Steve Barrett. I'm the Editorial Director of PRWeek. Going to guide you gently through the next 15-20 minutes of the show with our excellent guest this week, Mark Viden, who's Head of Brand at Dignity Health. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, it's great to be here.
Good to have you in from California. Finding the weather a little warm, but the studio's nice and cool. So
thank goodness.
Yeah. And my regular co-host, Frank Washkuch, the News Director of PRWeek. How you doing, Frank?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Been interesting weather this week.
It really has.
We've had some
storms every night.
Yeah.
Storms predicted for tonight too.
We had light shows and all sorts going on.
And that's why everybody's talking louder this week.
That's right.
Let's talk loud. I'm all about talking loud. You know that. So yeah, we're going to talk to Mark about the health system he works for and his role there and how they put their structure together in comms and marketing. Then we'll talk about the Monsanto situation and their agencies. Flesh and Hillard's CEO has come out and made a statement on that. The NRA has ended its, well, the other way around actually, the agency has ended its relationship with the NRA after a long time, for over 3 decades I think. We'll talk about new investment for W2O Group, interesting health-related agency. Diana Bradley, PRWeek Diana, she visited Procter & Gamble the other week and saw their wall of failures. Interesting stuff. Lots to learn from that. And Spotify, it's got a new feature which turns songs into recipes, which sounds like fun. We'll find out all about that. So, but Mark, starting with you, tell us a little bit about Dignity Health. It's the 5th largest health system in the US and the largest hospital system in California. But for listeners who might not be as familiar with it as some of the other health systems, tell us all about it.
Absolutely. So Dignity Health is located in California, Arizona, and Nevada. It's a nonprofit organization that has, in addition to hospitals, a number of acute care centers that allows people to access care in a manner that they're most comfortable with. Additionally, Dignity Health just recently merged with CHI, and we have a new parent company called Common Spirit. Headquartered in Chicago, Common Spirit is one of the largest not-for-profit healthcare organizations in the country. I think the geographies we serve cover almost 1 out of every 20 people in the country. So it's a very exciting time for us. I think we have an opportunity to, again, address health concerns that every one of us is facing in this nation, and I think we have the right people and talent to bring about some significant change.
Yeah, it's early days in that relationship. Does that make you bigger than the top 5 health systems now?
There's a lot of different math involved in that calculation, and I know a lot of people have been trying to figure out the best way to position us, but I don't think we've landed on an exact number. There's a lot of complicating factors involved in that.
More to come on that,
large.
No doubt. You're head of brand and you report into the chief strategy officer at Dignity, as do the PR professionals and heads of PR. Tell us a little bit about your role and also how your role interacts with the other departments.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm the brand leader for Common Spirit Health and their house of brands. That includes Dignity Health, which is where I came from. I report to Charlie Francis, who's the Senior Executive Vice President, Chief Strategy Officer. And the way Charlie is organized this is really to kind of flatten the reporting structure. So he has a team of, I think, about 11 direct reports I'm one of them. Additional functions include strategy, communications, some payer groups as well.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's important about how Charlie has organized us, because it allows us to really collaborate well. And in healthcare, you really have to be plugged in to what everyone is doing. You can't be in silos. So what someone in communications may be doing, let's say employee communications, will be directly relevant to what I'm doing in brand. And so how we engage is critical to be closely knit.
Yeah, so Mark Klein, for example, is corporate comms. Jill Dreher does sort of shared services, and there's one other PR professional.
Patrice Batchelor does employee communications.
Yeah, and they all report up to Charlie as well.
Yes.
And you there's a certain amount of interaction, no doubt. But you actually have a PR agency on your roster as head of brand, Allison and Partners. How do you tell us the sort of work you do with them?
That's right. Well, when we launched Hello Humankindness, this is going back to 2015, which is the brand strategy for Dignity Health. We recognized how important it was to tap into the power that consumer PR could bring to it. So, Hello Humankindness is a very innovative strategy. I don't even want to call it a campaign, because really it's an organizing principle, not only for how I lead communications on brand, but also how we advance patient experience, how we kind of relate to one another in the employee experience space. And so with consumer PR, what we realized is we call Hello Humankindness a movement, and we're sincere about that. We think that in the world we live today, that the discourse has gotten so strained that we want to insert into the marketplace something that is elevating. And so you can't do that with paid media alone. And consumer PR is a very effective tool for us. It allows us to really shine a light on the good works that our people are doing every day in our facilities. I'll give you an example. We had a commercial that featured a young girl who lost her hair through alopecia, and it's a beautiful, touching commercial. You see her dad shaving his head as well, so you kind of see what he's doing for her, and it's this beautiful moment of connection. So what Allison Partners did for us to kind of amplify that even further is partnered with Locks of Love, which is an organization that takes hair and donates it to children who maybe have lost their hair through cancer, chemo, other means. And we partnered with them. We brought in a celebrity hairstylist, Ann Co Tran, a big name if you're into celebrity hairstylists. Clearly I'm not, but
Frank's all over that stuff.
Do it all myself.
Celebrity beard grooming.
That's right. We brought him into one of our hospitals in the lobby. We invited, this happened to be in Los Angeles, we invited the community to come in to donate their hair. We had our nurses come down and help with the cutting of the hair, and Riley and her father was there. And it was so amazing to see her joy about all the people that had gathered to support her and her cause. And I think that's the power of how consumer PR can amplify a paid media message.
For sure, yeah, that's a good point. And did you create content around that as well of all the happenings in LA, and so you could almost do some owned media on the back of it as well, and then share on social?
Absolutely. I know we're live Facebooking this, and of course live Facebook was part of the day's event. The brand team has done just an amazing job on social media. We use primarily Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we had different kind of contents for each different channel. And it was, I'll tell you, the people that on the Facebook Live that were commenting as folks got their haircut was funny to see. And on Instagram stories, we just had some beautiful kind of before and after, and included Riley talking. And I think that amplification of the event, so the press was there, of course, but it was really, I think, how we were advancing the content.
Yeah, so you're mixing up, we talk about this a lot, paid, earned, shared, and owned.
That's right.
And it's a really good example. Which agency did the commercial for you?
11 Inc. So 11, based in San Francisco, they're our agency of record. They helped birth this whole concept we call Hello Humankindness. They're just an amazing bunch of creative people They're always challenging us, and I have just grown to really respect them and to value their counsel.
Yeah, it's a good point, and we talk about this as well about social media. It's a zero-sum environment, isn't it? You're either one side of one extreme of an argument or the other, and it is nice to see social being used because it's a beautiful environment for bringing people together, for getting distribution of content, discussion, and it would be nice to be able to have a few more productive, or where you can maybe have a discussion and maybe disagree with someone, but you don't actually have to end up hating them, you know. And so I totally get your point there. That's great stuff. Healthcare is one of those topics that is always going to be discussed, and people are going to have strong views around it. How has that changed? You know, the last 3 or 4 years, big changes in healthcare, and still a little bit up in the air about what the system is going to be moving forward. How's that changed what you do in your role, and what Dignity Health is doing?
Sure. I mean, I think what hasn't changed is healthcare is incredibly complicated. It's confusing. It can be scary for consumers. And you know, I think my role as the brand leader is to find ways to simplify that experience in how we communicate to people, to never deploy tactics that are scary or threatening. I think there's enough fear in this world without marketers or brand leaders adding to it. And so, you know, what I see is really lowering the temperature, if you will, and allowing people to better understand what we do, what and why we're there to serve. And you know, I think we've seen this campaign, Hello Humankindness, really change how we organize as a company. When you have a promise like that, Hello Humankindness, you have to deliver on it, right? Every second, every day. I mean, we know a brand is not a slogan, but a lived experience. And so how do you organize the entire company and around that? And you know, going back to how we're organized structurally, it isn't just my job. Everyone in the company is a brand ambassador. Everyone is responsible for ensuring that when someone comes in with a question, they're listened to, they're looked in the eye. That's so important in establishing trust and comfort and lowering blood pressure. So anyway, long story short is I think, you know, our role in healthcare, what I see this work doing is really providing a way into a system that again can be very difficult to understand and comprehend.
Yeah, for sure. And we at our annual conference in October in Chicago, it's called Purpose Principles. We're really going to dig into that, how brands can be authentic in their purpose and not purpose wash, as it were, and to the point, have it as part of the mission of the company that everyone buys into, and then everything sort of stems from there, doesn't it?
Well, I love that you bring up brand. I mean, the brand purpose, it's one of those buzz terms like authentic.
It is.
But I'll tell you, if you do it right, it will pay dividends. So when we were developing our brand purpose, we didn't turn to 11 and say, go do it. We turned to our own employees and said, what to you is the most important? What would you like the world to know about us that they may not know? And it was our employees' feedbacks, our nurses, doctors, volunteers. It was them who told us what we want to stand for is something bigger than even healthcare. We see people at their most vulnerable moments, and it's these moments of human connection that are the most sacred, and we want that out in the world. We want to again be a force for good, truly, as opposed to just another loud voice on television. And so we came up with a very innovative way to do that. So, you know, we could have gone out and shot commercials with actors, and we just thought that's not us. We want to kind of highlight those beautiful moments that are happening everywhere around us. And so our campaign uses something called found footage. So we have teams that scour YouTube, Facebook, Instagram for moments that we think are beautiful metaphors for the care we provide. So I'll give you a quick example. There was a commercial of a whale that had a net around the middle, and it had been there a while because it was indented. 2 divers went and removed that net, and at the very end you see them high-fiving each other because they got it off and the whale swims away. Well, what does that have to do with healthcare, right? What it has to do is that it is an example of the kind of moments we think we provide, and it's an example of the kind of society we want to see. So it's again, this purpose came from our people, from our employees. If we had gone out and tried to do it ourselves, it wouldn't have been as powerful.
No, you make a massively fair point, and those internal stakeholders are your best brand ambassadors and really the start of all your external communication. So it's a great point. Great point to finish on. Thank you, Mark. Great to find out more about that, and we'll hear from you later in the show. Frank, let's get on to the news topics. A story we've been following is Monsanto and Bayer, which acquired Monsanto last year, and goings on in France there, and suspension of activities with agencies. So talk us through that and the latest developments.
Yes, the latest development is that John Saunders, the CEO of Fleischmann-Hillard, is sticking up for his agency.
And they work with Monsanto and Bayer.
Yes, that's correct. And Monsanto, we should say, was acquired by Bayer a couple of years ago in what was then one of the biggest deals of all time. So what the agency essentially did in Europe was make lists of information, journalists, other VIPs, other stakeholders. There's an investigation in France into whether or not that was legal, because French law very closely governs what kind of information you can collect on people based on their political views. So John Saunders is sticking up for his agency and saying that it was their job to essentially gather information about stakeholders so that his clients could make informed decisions on things.
Yeah, it's an interesting ethical line, isn't it, that we discussed on a previous show, and there are regional elements to it. There's GDPR comes into it, doesn't it? And we should stress that that investigation is still going on. Nobody's been found guilty of anything, but Bayer has suspended working with certain parts of those agencies while that happens. So it's an ongoing story, but interesting that John Saunders did come out and say that for sure. Another slightly sensitive topic is the NRA and their agency. They had a relationship, I think, of 38 years with this.
That's right. It's Ackerman McQueen, which is an Oklahoma City-based firm, and they've worked together for almost 4 decades on advertising, on marketing in general. And Ackerman McQueen has walked away from the NRA, and it's a mess. They are suing each other. Part of what is at question in this lawsuit is whether the agency was working on behalf of Oliver North, who in one of his many lives was working as the president of the NRA most recently, and whether the agency was involved in making public knowledge about the spending of Wayne LaPierre, the group's current leader, which was said to be a bit extravagant, so sort of casting doubt on the financial leadership of the NRA at the time. So the two sides are suing each other. Ackerman McQueen has walked away after 4 decades. We'll see who they work with next, and we'll see if any agencies choose to work with the NRA going forward.
Yeah, it seems to be a bit of a financial mess over there overall, doesn't it? So that's a long agency relations to end, and that's not the right way to end any relationship, is it, in court? But it often does end up there. Another agency story, W2O Group, very successful agency, has grown significantly over the past decade, 20 to 30% a year, headed up by Jim Weiss. They've got some new investment to help them with their next stage.
A new big investor, and this is not a typo. The new investor is New Mountain Capital, which is replacing Mountain Gate Capital, 2 different firms. But if you look at the growth of W2O over the past couple of years, I mean, it's pretty extraordinary. And Jim Weiss, the CEO of W2O, told us that essentially they had met their obligations from Mountain Gate a few years earlier than they were supposed to. They had originally signed a 5-year investment deal 3 years ago.
Okay. So what are they planning to do next with this new investment?
They are looking to expand in research and analytics, and perhaps some geographic expansion as well.
Mark, what are the sort of things you're looking for? We talked a little bit about it with Allison and Partners, but you are looking for different things from agencies these days, aren't you? We hear a lot about in-housing, companies and organisations taking certain services in-house. How has your need for agency support changed over the years?
I think what's really important for me and for others at the organization I work is that agency partners, people who we have brought in, truly are part of the group. They are not vendors or someone paid for hire. We see them as partners in our journey. We compensate them along with how we do. they have a stake in what happens to our business, and I think that what we tend to value is long-term relationships with really talented individuals, and that certainly has been the case with the partners I work with. I oversee a media agency, Horizon, out of LA, in addition to 11 and Allison Partners, and what I find is so important is to bring them all together. You don't want to have the agencies competing against each other. You don't want them to be at cross purposes. You want them to be collaborating and really marching to the same tune. And it can be messy at times, but it is just incredibly important. And having been on the agency side myself, I know how valued you feel when you are treated that way. And I just think that that's we treat agency folks no different than we treat each other.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear, because that's not the case in all organisations, for sure, which you will know if you worked at agencies. And there's often complaints about pitching every 2 years, whatever the state of the relationship, just to screw down the pricing or whatever, or some of the payment terms that clients put on agencies. It's big discussions about that now. So having a respectful relationship both ways, I think, is a very positive way to get better work as well. So it's a win-win if you can make that work, for sure.
Absolutely.
Frank, PRWeek Diana Bradley, our superstar reporter, she recently visited Cincinnati, the head office of Procter & Gamble, the biggest advertiser in the world, or one of. And great trip, but she came across an interesting display, didn't she, while she was there?
Yes, P&G has a wall of failures, which is a really interesting idea. And essentially, you make an example out of the products that didn't work out the way that you might have planned. So one of them is the Febreze Scent Stories, which was this product that kind of resembled the CD player that you put like a disc-like object in, and it essentially changed the smell of a room every 15 minutes. It also cost like $30, which was probably not what people had in mind. Also, compact for Loves were a different type of Pampers diaper, and some other ones that just didn't work out the way they had planned. They don't have Tide Pods on the list, which is interesting, because despite the Tide Pod challenge, the pod was an innovative product, despite the crazy YouTube videos that popped up.
Tide Pod challenge was people starting to eat them, wasn't it?
Yeah, millennials.
Yeah. So let's not get Frank onto his favourite topic then. But they got the Gronk in to sort that out, didn't they? Do you remember?
And he did a great job with it.
Yeah.
He really did.
Well, you're a big fan of the Gronk, aren't you?
Not necessarily, but give him credit where it's due in this case. He got the millennials in line.
Mickey Brown behind the dials is desperate to weigh in there as a big Patriots fan, but we're not going to let him because we're in New York. So interesting stuff. Wall of failures.
Yeah.
You do learn more from your mistakes than your successes.
You do, and they had Crest on there, and not that there's anything necessarily wrong with the toothpaste, but just that they didn't get onto the tooth whitening product craze as quickly as they could have too. So it's interesting, and I think it's a good, healthy attitude.
The craze, frankly, is a lot more popular in the States than my home country. But let's not get onto the Brits and their teeth. What can you learn from Procter & Gamble? They kind of invented a lot of consumer marketing, didn't they? Is that, as a marketer yourself, a brand person, do you see them as a bellwether, or the sort of the best in class to learn from? Done that over the years?
Well, a quick comment on the wall of failures. I think it's a great idea. I mean, if you're not failing, you're not swinging for the fences, and everyone should have a couple of failures in their back pocket that you don't hide. And
I certainly have several, actually. I need more pockets. So
I love that idea. But in terms of P&G, when practically what I have been impressed by is their agitation for transparency on digital buys. How measurement is conducted in that whole area is imperfect at best, and I have appreciated their strong leadership to really force those digital agencies, those properties, to be better accountable.
Yeah, so we are on Facebook Live, but let's mention Facebook, because they were selling more than the population of the United States, weren't they, on some of their media plans, which was an interesting concept.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, good point on that. All right, let's finish with Spotify. They're turning songs into recipes, Frank. How the hell are they doing that?
Well, it's this concept called synthesia, and what synthesia is, and just bear with me here, is translating one type of sense into another type of sense. So in this case, it's translating music into taste, and taking music and basically saying, if it was food, this is what it would taste like. So samba music would have a real like high energy, heat-driven recipe to make it. But in all seriousness, it's a campaign for Tramontina, which is a Brazilian cookware brand that's really interesting. It's really creative. It's definitely out of the mold, and yeah, good campaign.
So is Spotify kind of pitching this as a way for brands to work with them, or?
Not necessarily. It reads more as a one-off campaign for this specific brand, but I think it's interesting. I think it's creative. I think that they probably won't be the first or last brand to try to do this sort of thing. So interesting to see where it goes next.
What do you think, Mark?
I think it's a great idea. I'll tell you, music has healing properties. Quick example, in our NICU units, those are babies who are born prematurely and are in little incubators. They can all be crying, and we will bring in a harpsichordist, and the crying just stops, and you can just feel the soothing kind of environment that's been replaced by it. We worked with Spotify on creating human kindness playlists because music, it's how we relate to each other. It's how we feel, right? And so if brands can tap into music in a really relevant way, and I think that recipe idea is just genius. I think it just serves everyone well. So love hearing about that.
So here's another one. Beethoven's Symphony No. 5 in C minor is foie gras terrine with salmon caviar and cold barley.
Okay.
That's a rich concoction.
Yeah.
What do you think about this bringing in a harpsichordist, Frank, into the newsroom when it gets stressful on press day, or just to maybe drown out some of the more annoying noises in the newsroom?
I think it would be terrific.
Not that we have any particular ones in mind. No.
No, I think it would be a terrific idea, and if you know a harpsichordist that does pro bono work for
Perfect. That's right, particularly for agencies.
All right, thank you, Frank. Mark, great to have you on the show. Really enjoyed chatting, and some good news stories and some feel-good stuff, which we need a bit of that in the world, I think, at the moment. So thank you for that. A couple of customer service announcements. We've got our Hall of Femme event. Very excited about that. It's next Wednesday, June the 5th, in New York City, where we honour women in PR, and we have a terrific lineup of speakers and presenters. We've got Jennifer Nettles talking of music, the country singer. She's going to be there. We've got Cauliflower in the room. Gail Becker, who used to be at Edelman and left to set up Cauliflower cauliflower-based pizzas, and she's turned that into a magnificent success, 60 million plus company in a couple of years. So Gail's going to be inspiring us there, and lots of other great speakers and networking. So if you haven't got your ticket for that, do check it out soon, because we're selling out. I mentioned the conference. That's going to be in Chicago, PR Decoded, Purpose Principles, October 16th and 17th. And we have our annual Bellwether survey out in the field, which we work on with Boston University. It's the biggest and best survey of the sector, and you have until Friday to take that survey and be a part of it. You can see the link on our breakfast briefing at the top, or check it out on the website or social media. But that's all we got time for. We'll see you next time on the PR Week.